My parents forced me to pay all the bills while my unemployed sister lived rent-free, saying, "You're the responsible one." Then Dad demanded I cover her family's expenses too. So I moved out in secret. When he called, screaming, "Where's the money?" I replied, "I don't even know where to start." Maybe with the moment I realized I was nothing more than an ATM to my own family. Or maybe it was long before that, when I was still a kid, watching my parents treat my younger sister like she was a princess while I was expected to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. Looking back, it feels like my entire life was leading up to that phone call, my father's voice shrieking through the receiver, "Where's the money?" And all I said was, "Not my problem anymore." That was the moment everything changed. But before I get to that, let me explain how I ended up in this mess in the first place. I grew up in a small town outside of Chicago. My parents weren't rich, but they were comfortable enough to put food on the table and keep the lights on. From the outside, we looked like a regular middle-class family. But inside our house, there were two different sets of rules, one for me, and one for my younger sister, Amy. Amy was the golden child. My parents doted on her like she was made of glass. If she got bad grades, it was the teacher's fault. If she got into trouble at school, it was because other kids were a bad influence. If she crashed her first car, one that my parents bought for her, it was just an accident, and they bought her another one. Meanwhile, I was expected to be responsible. If I got anything less than an A, I was not working hard enough. If I wanted a car, I had to work for it. If I needed money for anything, I had to earn it myself. By the time I was 16, I had 2 part-time jobs. I remember my 16th birthday vividly. While most kids got cars or parties, I got a lecture about becoming a man and stepping up. My dad sat me down in our kitchen, his face serious as he explained that I needed to start contributing more to the household. I thought he meant more chores. He meant money. "It's time you started paying for your keep," he said, sliding a piece of paper across the table with a number written on it. It was nearly half of what I made at my weekend job. When I stared at him in disbelief, he patted my shoulder. "Welcome to adulthood, son." That night, I cried quietly in my room. Not because of the money, though that stung, but because while I was being forced into adulthood, I watched through my window as my parents surprised Amy with concert tickets for her and her friends. She was 14. The dichotomy couldn't have been clearer. My parents encouraged it, not because we were struggling, but because, as my dad put it, it builds character. Amy? She didn't work a single day in her life. I should have seen where this was going. When I graduated high school, I put myself through college. No help from my parents. I took out loans, worked my ass off, and managed to get my degree. Amy, on the other hand, barely graduated. She didn't go to college, didn't get a job, didn't do anything. She just sat around, scrolled through social media, and somehow, my parents were fine with it. I moved back home after college to save money. I had student loans, and living with my parents was supposed to be a temporary thing. I planned to stay for a year, maybe 2, just until I had enough to get my own place. Then my mom had a stroke. It wasn't fatal, but it left her unable to work. My dad asked me to help out with bills just for a little while. I didn't hesitate. I loved my mom, and I wanted to help. I started paying part of the mortgage, covering groceries, and making sure the utilities stayed on. But, just for a little while, turned into forever. As time went on, my financial help became expected. My dad started asking for more and more. First, it was half the mortgage. Then it was all of it. Every time I pushed back, I got the same guilt trip. "You're the responsible one. We can count on you." And the worst part? Amy was still living there, rent-free, doing nothing, contributing nothing. I was covering everything. The mortgage, the water, the electricity, the groceries, hell, even the internet bill that Amy used all day to scroll through Instagram and TikTok. I tried to say no. I tried to tell my dad that Amy needed to get a job and start pulling her weight. But he always had an excuse. "She's going through a rough patch. You don't understand how hard it is for her. You're her older brother. You should want to help her." I was drowning. My entire paycheck was going to support a household that I didn't even want to be in anymore. I couldn't save, couldn't move forward, couldn't do anything. Then Amy got her boyfriend, Alex, pregnant. Well, she was pregnant, but you know what I mean. And they moved into the house for free. I lost my mind. I told my dad there was no way in hell I was paying for them, too. I wasn't their father. I wasn't responsible for their choices. But my dad just looked at me like I was the world's biggest disappointment and said, "You make more than enough. Family helps family." That was the moment I realized it didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter how much I worked, how much I sacrificed. I would never be anything more than a paycheck to them. That's when I started planning my escape. I found an apartment in the city, signed the lease in secret, and started slowly moving my stuff out. A few boxes at a time, just enough that no one would notice. I stopped depositing my paycheck into the joint account my dad had access to. I saved every penny I could. Then, one Friday night, after work, I just didn't go home. I turned off my phone. I ignored the messages. I slept in my new place, in a bed I bought for myself, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. 2 days later, my phone exploded with calls. My dad, my sister, even Alex, voicemails, texts, emails. The theme was the same in every message. Where are you? The mortgage is due. The power bill is overdue. You can't just disappear. And the one that made me laugh out loud, your sister has a family to take care of. That was when I finally answered. I put the phone on speaker and just let my dad rant. He was furious. He demanded to know where I was. Demanded to know why the bills weren't paid. Demanded to know how I could be so selfish. When he finally stopped to take a breath, I said, "Oh, sorry. I moved out. Not my problem anymore." I don't think I've ever heard someone scream so loudly in my life. And the crazy part? That was just the beginning. The screaming on the other end of the phone was unreal. My father was losing his mind. You can't just leave. We have bills. Your sister has a family. How could you do this to us? I put him on speaker and set the phone down on the counter while I made myself a coffee. He kept ranting, not even noticing I wasn't responding. I finally picked up the phone and said, "I didn't do anything to you. I just stopped paying for things that weren't my responsibility." Silence. For a second, I thought he had hung up. Then, in a voice that was suddenly ice cold, he said, "You'll regret this." I hung up and laughed. What was he going to do? Drag me back home? I didn't hear from him for a few days after that. It was bliss. I was still adjusting to my new life, enjoying the fact that my money was finally mine. No more watching my entire paycheck disappear the second it hit my account. No more guilt tripping. No more being the family ATM. Then the text started. At first, it was my dad. "Your mother is sick, and you don't even care. We can't afford groceries this week. I hope you're happy. Your sister had to sell her designer bag because of you. I hope you can live with yourself." Then Amy joined in. "Dad says you need to come back. You're ruining everything. You're a selfish bastard. You think you're better than us? You owe us. We took care of you growing up. Now it's your turn." I blocked them both. Then Alex. "Wow. Just wow. How could you do this to a baby? You've left us in a really bad spot. I hope you can sleep at night. A real man wouldn't abandon his family." That last one made me laugh. I didn't abandon my family, I freed myself from being their hostage. A week passed. I started to relax. I thought maybe, just maybe, they would finally get the message. That's when I got a call from my job's HR department. They sounded concerned. "Hey, we got a really strange call today from your father?" I nearly dropped my phone. Apparently, he had called my job, pretending to be me, and tried to get information about my paycheck. He wanted to know how much I was making and if my direct deposit could be changed. HR, thankfully, had shut him down immediately. But I was humiliated. I called my father in a rage. "What the hell is wrong with you? You tried to steal my paycheck?" He didn't even deny it. "Well, what choice did I have? You left us with nothing. We can't survive without your help." I was shaking with anger. "That is not my problem." And then the bombshell. He laughed. "Oh, son. You think you can just walk away? You think you can just abandon your family and everything will be fine?" I didn't like the way he said that. "What did you do?" I asked slowly. He sighed, like he was talking to a child. "I had no choice. I had to take out a credit card in your name just to get us through the month." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You did what?" "He stole my identity, opened a credit card in my name, and maxed it out. And the worst part? He thought I would just accept it." I stood there gripping my phone, my whole body shaking. My own father had stolen my identity, opened a credit card in my name, and maxed it out without a second thought. And he had the audacity to act like it was my fault. "You what?" I screamed so loud my neighbors probably heard me. He sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "It's not a big deal. We just needed a little help. You weren't giving us anything, so I had to do what I had to do." I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. "How much did you spend?" Silence. "Dad, how much?" A nervous laugh. "Well, between groceries, some repairs, a little for Amy and Alex." I closed my eyes, trying to keep my voice steady. "How much?" "It's only, like, 10. Maybe 15. 15,000? I nearly dropped my phone. My father had racked up $15,000 of debt, in my name, without my permission. I took a deep breath, my fingers clenched so tight my nails dug into my palm. "You committed fraud. That is a crime. Do you understand that?" He scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. It's not like you weren't going to help us anyway." And that's when it hit me. He genuinely believed this was okay. In his mind, I wasn't a person, I was a resource. A walking wallet. I hung up without another word. I called the credit card company immediately. I explained everything, how I never authorized the card, how it was fraud, how it was my own father who stole my identity. The rep was sympathetic but firm. "You need to file a police report." I froze. Turning him into the police? My father. Even after everything he had done, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I thought about the years of financial abuse, the guilt trips, the stolen money, the way he used me, drained me, took everything I had while Amy sat on her ass doing nothing. No. I wasn't going to feel guilty for protecting myself. I went to the police station the next day. I told them everything. They took my statement, and within a few hours, an officer called my dad. Not even 15 minutes later, my phone started blowing up. Dad, Amy, Alex, even my mom, who never got involved in anything. I ignored every call. Then Amy left me a voicemail. You're seriously turning Dad in over money? Are you insane? He's our father. You don't do that to family. I laughed bitterly. Family? What kind of family steals from their own and then plays the victim? I didn't respond. I let the legal system do its thing. A few days later, I got a call from the bank. The card had been flagged for fraud, and the charges were under investigation. They were wiping the debt from my account. I thought that was the end of it, but my father was nowhere near done. One night, I came home to find my apartment door slightly open. My stomach dropped. I slowly pushed it open, and my entire living room was trashed. Drawers pulled out, cushions thrown across the floor, my laptop missing. And the worst part? There was a note taped to my fridge. You did this to yourself. Maybe now you'll come back and do the right thing. I knew that handwriting. It was Amy's. I stood there staring at the note, my heart pounding. My own sister had broken into my apartment. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The second the dispatcher picked up, I told them my place had been broken into, and I had reason to believe my own family was involved. The cops arrived within minutes. They took pictures, dusted for fingerprints, and asked me if I had any suspects. I didn't even hesitate. It was my sister, Amy. They took the note as evidence and promised to investigate. But I wasn't going to sit around and wait. I went straight to my building's management office the next morning. They had security cameras everywhere. I asked if they could pull footage from the night before, and sure enough, there she was, Amy, using a crowbar to pry my door open. But it got worse. The footage also showed Alex standing outside, acting as a lookout. I felt sick. They weren't just entitled, they were criminals. I took the footage straight to the police. Between the video, the fingerprints, and the note, they had more than enough to arrest Amy. That night, my phone blew up again. My dad, Amy, Alex, even my mom. I let them all go to voicemail. The next day, I woke up to a Facebook post from my father. It was a long, dramatic rant about how I had betrayed my family, how I had Amy arrested over nothing, and how I would burn in hell for turning on my own blood. The comment section was a mess. Some of his friends were sympathizing with him, but others were calling him out. Asking why his grown daughter was breaking into her brother's home. Asking why he was defending a criminal. Then Alex made a post. Can't believe some people would rather throw their family in jail than just help out when they're needed. I had had enough. I left a single comment under his post. Breaking into someone's home isn't needing help. It's a crime. And now you both get to face the consequences of your actions. Then I blocked every single one of them. 2 days later, the police arrested Amy. Alex tried to plead ignorance, but he was charged as an accomplice. My dad? He lost it. He showed up at the police station, screaming about how it was all a misunderstanding, how kids make mistakes, how I was tearing the family apart. The officers told him to leave or he'd be arrested for disturbing the peace. He left, but not before screaming at the top of his lungs, "You'll pay for this." But I wasn't the one paying. Amy was charged with breaking and entering, theft, and destruction of property. She had a record already from other stupid things she had done in the past, so the judge wasn't lenient. She got 2 years in prison. Alex took a plea deal and got probation, but he had to pay back everything they stole from me. As for my father, the fraud charges against him went through. He was ordered to pay back every cent he had stolen from me. He tried to fight it in court, but there was too much evidence. He lost the house? Foreclosed. Without my money keeping it afloat, my parents couldn't afford the mortgage. Last I heard, my mom and dad were living in a tiny apartment, struggling to make ends meet. And me? I was finally free. I paid off my remaining debts, built my savings, and finally started living for myself. One day, I got a text from an unknown number. "I forgive you. We can move past this if you apologize." It was from my dad. I stared at it for a long time, then I deleted it. I didn't need his forgiveness. He needed mine, and he was never going to get it. Growing up, I always felt like there was something wrong with me. All my friends complained about typical parent stuff, curfews, chores, not being allowed to go to certain parties. But my issues? They were different. My parents never seemed to care what I did, as long as I was bringing home money. The more I made, the less they cared about my actual well-being. I remember the first time I realized how different my home life was. I was 15, and I'd just gotten my first real job at a local grocery store. My friend Jake came over after my shift one day, and he was shocked when my dad asked me for half my paycheck. "What's that about?" Jake asked after my dad left the room. I shrugged, embarrassed. "He says rent doesn't pay itself." Jake looked at me like I had two heads. "Dude, you're 15. Your parents are supposed to provide for you, not the other way around." That was the first time I realized not all kids had to hand over their paychecks to their parents. But it was too late, the pattern was already set. That night, I went to Jake's house for dinner. I still remember how strange it felt watching his parents interact with him. They asked about his day, his homework, his hobbies. They didn't once mention money or bills or responsibilities. When his mom served dinner, she gave Jake the biggest portion without hesitation. At my house, Amy always got the best cuts of meat, the largest helpings, while I was told to eat light because I was watching my budget. After dinner, Jake's dad offered to help him with his science project. Just like that, offered, without being asked, without expecting anything in return. I sat there, feeling like I was observing aliens. This was how normal families worked? This warm, supportive atmosphere? This unconditional love? It was so foreign to me, I almost couldn't process it. "You okay, man?" Jake asked as we played video games later. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. How could I explain that I just had a life-altering revelation? That I'd just discovered my family wasn't just strict or old-fashioned, they were exploitative? I went home that night with a knot in my stomach that never really went away. I started noticing things I'd previously accepted as normal. Like how my parents never came to my soccer games but attended every one of Amy's dance recitals. Or how they kept a detailed ledger of every dollar I owed them but paid for Amy's phone bill without question. By senior year, I was working nearly full-time while trying to keep my grades up. I'd come home exhausted, only to find Amy lounging on the couch, watching TV, with no job, no chores, no responsibilities. When I asked my parents why she didn't have to work, my mom would say, "She's not as independent as you are," or my dad would say, "You've always been the mature one." They made it sound like a compliment, but it was just manipulation. They weren't praising my maturity, they were exploiting it. I remember missing my senior prom because I had to work a double shift. Amy went to all her school dances, with dresses my parents bought her. When I asked for money for a suit, my dad said, "You have a job. Figure it out." I figured it out, all right. I worked the double, missed the dance, and added the money to my secret savings account, the one my parents didn't know about. That account was my first act of rebellion, my first step toward freedom. Little did I know how important it would become. College was my escape. I got a scholarship that covered part of my tuition, and I worked to pay for the rest. I lived in the dorms, and for the first time in my life, I felt normal. I didn't have to hand over my paycheck to anyone. I didn't have to watch someone else get special treatment while I struggled. I had friends, I joined clubs, I even dated a bit. It was the happiest time of my life. Then my mom had her stroke, and everything changed. I felt obligated to go home and help. That's what sons do, right? They take care of their parents when they're in need. But I didn't realize taking care would mean financing their entire lives, and by extension, Amy's life too. Looking back, I can see all the red flags. The way my dad gradually asked for more and more money. The way Amy never even attempted to get a job, even though she was perfectly capable. The way my parents treated her unemployment as a temporary phase, even though it had been going on for years. The way they celebrated when she announced her pregnancy, even though she had no means to support a child. The way they volunteered my money to help with the baby expenses without even asking me. It was all manipulation. A slow, calculated drain on my resources until I had nothing left for myself. Until I was just an empty shell, existing only to provide for others. The day I moved out was the day I reclaimed my life. I remember packing my car in the middle of the night, heart pounding, afraid someone would wake up and catch me. I felt like a criminal, sneaking away from my own family. But as I drove away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I could breathe. My new apartment wasn't fancy. It was a small one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, nothing special. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every towel, I bought it all with my own money, for myself. I didn't have to share. I didn't have to ask permission. I didn't have to feel guilty for spending my own hard-earned cash. I thought the hard part was over. I thought once I was out, they'd have to accept it and move on. I underestimated just how entitled they felt to my money. The calls and texts were relentless. My dad's voice, once comforting, now sent chills down my spine. "Where's the money?" he'd demand, like I had stolen from him, like my paycheck belonged to him by right. Amy was worse in some ways. She'd alternate between anger and guilt-tripping. One text would call me every name in the book, and the next would include a picture of her baby, with a caption like, "Uncle doesn't care if we eat today." It was emotional blackmail, pure and simple. The identity theft was the final straw. When my dad casually mentioned opening a credit card in my name, like it was no big deal, like it was his right, I felt something inside me snap. That was when I knew there was no going back, no reconciliation possible. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Filing the police report was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The officer taking my statement looked at me with a mix of sympathy and confusion. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "It's your father we're talking about." I was sure. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. And it felt right. The officer sighed as he took down my statement. "Family fraud cases are the worst," he said, shaking his head. "But you're not the first, and you won't be the last. People think blood gives them the right to everything." As I described the years of financial exploitation, the officer's expression shifted from skepticism to genuine concern. By the time I showed him the texts from my dad bragging about the credit card, his sympathy was fully with me. What you're describing isn't just fraud, he told me, his voice gentle but firm. It's financial abuse. It's a form of domestic violence that doesn't leave visible bruises, but the damage is just as real. Hearing someone in authority validate what I'd experienced sent a wave of emotion through me. All these years, I'd thought maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was the ungrateful son my family painted me as. But no, what they'd done was wrong. Criminally wrong. When I left the station that day, I felt lighter somehow. Not happy, I don't think anyone feels happy about turning in their own parent, but vindicated. Seen. Like maybe I wasn't crazy after all. The aftermath was ugly. The break-in, the arrests, the court cases, the Facebook drama, it was like something out of a bad movie. My father's public meltdown at the police station was particularly surreal. Watching a grown man, my own father, screaming like a toddler because he couldn't get his way. It's been 2 years now. Amy served her time and is out on parole. Alex has a job now, ironically enough. My parents struggled after losing the house, but last I heard, my dad finally got a job too. Funny how necessity breeds motivation. As for me? I'm doing better than ever. I got a promotion at work. I'm dating someone who respects me and my boundaries. I'm saving for a house of my own. Most importantly, I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. My therapist says that's the best revenge, though revenge isn't what I'm after. I started seeing her about 6 months after the arrests. I kept having nightmares about my dad showing up at my door, about Amy breaking in again, about losing everything I'd worked for. The therapist, Dr. Chen, helped me understand that what I'd experienced was traumatic. That's the word she used, traumatic. You survived years of systematic abuse, she told me during one of our early sessions. Your brain is still in survival mode. It's going to take time to feel safe again. She was right. It did take time. Learning to trust that my own money was mine to keep. Learning to silence that voice in my head, my father's voice, telling me I was selfish for buying myself lunch or a new shirt. Learning to set boundaries without feeling guilty. The hardest lesson was understanding that I deserved better. Always had. That the problem was never me, it was them. Their greed, their entitlement, their twisted view of family that saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. Dr. Chen asked me once if I would ever treat my own child the way my parents treated me. The very idea made me physically ill. Of course not, I said. I would give them everything I could. I would put them first. Then why, she asked gently, do you feel like you deserved less? That question changed something fundamental inside me. It shifted my perspective from why did they do this to me? To why did I accept it for so long? The answer, of course, was that I was a child who loved his parents and sister. Who wanted to believe they loved me back, even as their actions proved otherwise. Sometimes I think about reaching out, about trying to rebuild some kind of relationship with them. But then I remember the theft, the break-in, the years of exploitation, and I know it's not worth it. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. That text from my dad, I forgive you, it says everything about why we'll never reconcile. He still thinks he's the wrong party. He still thinks I owe him something. He still doesn't see me as a person, just as a resource. I don't hate them, not anymore. Hate requires energy, and I'm done giving them any more of my energy. I'm done giving them any part of me at all. I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about respect, about mutual support, about love that doesn't come with conditions or price tags. My real family is the one I'm building now. Friends who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. A partner who supports my goals rather than draining my resources. Someday, maybe, children of my own, who I'll raise to know their worth isn't tied to their productivity or their bank account. That's the family I deserve. That's the family I choose. And if my blood relatives ever figure out what real family means, maybe they can be part of it too. But I'm not holding my breath. And I'm certainly not paying their bills ever again. Last week, I ran into an old neighbor from my parents' street. Mrs. Jenkins, a kindly widow who used to give me cookies when I'd mow her lawn as a teen. She recognized me immediately. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like lavender and baking. "I've wondered about you. How are you doing?" I gave her the abbreviated version. I'd moved out, was doing well, had a good job. She nodded, her eyes knowing. "Your mom and dad, they don't talk about you much," she said cautiously. "But Amy. She had another baby last month. Your parents are raising it. Your dad's working at the hardware store now." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not surprise, Amy's shirking responsibility was entirely in character. Not guilt, their choices weren't my burden. Maybe a touch of sadness for the children caught in the cycle. But mostly? Relief. Relief that it wasn't me anymore. Relief that I was free. "Are you in touch with them at all?" Mrs. Jenkins asked. I shook my head. "It's better this way," I said. And I meant it. She squeezed my hand. "I always thought you got a raw deal in that house," she said quietly. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. For getting out. For making something of yourself." Her words touched me more deeply than I expected. All those years, I thought no one saw what was happening. But Mrs. Jenkins had seen. She'd known, in her way. And now she was validating my choice to leave. I wonder sometimes about the new baby, my niece or nephew. Will they become the new cash cow when they're old enough to work? Will they be trapped in the same cycle of obligation and guilt that held me for so long? I hope not. I hope my parents have learned something from losing me, losing their house, losing their comfortable life of exploitation. But I know better than to count on it. People rarely change that fundamentally, especially when they don't think they've done anything wrong. As for me, I've started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring kids from difficult homes. I can spot the ones like me, the ones who carry adult worries on young shoulders, the ones who have that haunted look that comes from growing up too fast. I make sure they know they deserve better. That family shouldn't hurt. That love shouldn't come with a price tag. Maybe that's my true inheritance from my parents, not money or property or happy memories, but the hard-won wisdom of someone who's seen the dark side of family obligation and survived to tell the tale. If I can help even one kid escape what I went through, then maybe it was all worth it. But either way, I'm free now. And that freedom? It's priceless. 3 months ago, I got a certified letter. My hand trembled as I signed for it, convinced it was some new legal threat from my family. Instead, it was from a lawyer representing my mother. My mom was filing for divorce from my dad. The letter was brief but explained that after years of my father's financial mismanagement and the consequences of his actions, my mother had finally had enough. She'd found part-time work despite her health issues and was slowly rebuilding her life. The lawyer explained that she wasn't asking for anything from me, no money, no help, nothing. She just wanted me to know. At the bottom of the formal letter was a handwritten note from my mom: "I should have protected you. I'm sorry I didn't. You deserved better." I sat with that letter for days, rereading it, trying to decide how I felt. Anger that the apology came so late. Relief that at least one of my parents recognized the harm they'd caused. Skepticism about whether this was just another manipulation tactic. In the end, I wrote back a short note: "I hope you find peace in your new life. Take care of yourself." Not forgiveness, exactly, but not a door slammed shut either. Just acknowledgement. I don't know if we'll ever rebuild any kind of relationship. Trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to fully restore. But her taking responsibility, however belatedly, felt like the final piece of my healing journey falling into place. Sometimes, the most believable ending isn't a dramatic reconciliation or a complete cutting of ties, but something messier, more complicated, a small gesture that doesn't erase the past but creates the tiniest possibility of a different future. For now, though, I'm content with my chosen family, my freedom, and the knowledge that I broke the cycle. And really, that's enough.